Chapter 105. 3 days later. An inconspicuous carriage slowly moved along the street. The carriage was not conspicuous, but the driver was a cold and elegant girl dressed in black. Her face was delicate and beautiful, and her body wrapped in black was extremely hot and seductive. If she had a smile on her face, she would definitely be a stunner that could make men fall head over heels for her. However, this girl in black was emitting a cold aura, and that cold aura made people not dare to approach her. In the carriage, Guan Shilin looked at Xiao Ju, who was reading a book, and asked in confusion, "Xiao Ju, your medical skills are so good, why don't you remove the scars on your face first?" It had been so long, but the scars on her face had not faded. Every time he saw those scars on her face, he was worried for her, but she seemed to be used to it and did not care. Didn't they say that women did not want their faces to be damaged? Why did he see that she was not worried at all, and did not care at all? "No hurry, the scar removal ointment I made is still missing one ingredient," she said casually, turning the page and continuing to read. This was a scroll of soaring cloud steps, which she found in her master's space collection. She looked at it and found that the footwork inside was much better than her original footwork. She had been reading it since she left the Peach Blossom Cove, and now she was reluctant to put it down. Until, when she smelled a fragrance, she could not help but raise her head. "Brother, do you smell anything?" Her eyes lit up as she looked at him. Smelling the fragrance, she couldn't help but swallow her saliva. Seeing her greedy look, Guan Shilin could not help but laugh. He reached out and tapped her head. "You have such a good sense of smell, you can smell the fragrance of scallion pancakes through the curtain." Yes, it's scallion pancakes." She smiled and shook his arm. "Brother, go buy it for me, I want two." She stretched out 2 fingers and shook it. Okay, I'll go buy it." He shook his head and smiled. At this time, Lung Shuang, who was driving the carriage, heard the conversation inside and slowed down. Guan Shilin lifted the curtain and jumped down from the carriage. He said to Lung Shuang, "Stop the carriage for a while. I'll go buy some cakes. I'll be back soon." As he spoke, he had already walked towards a small stall not far away. Lung Shuang stopped the carriage and waited. He looked at the stall. "Uncle, give me 4 scallion pancakes." Guan Shilin took out some money and shouted, "Young master, do you want 2 bowls of mung bean soup?" Scallion pancakes with mung bean soup are also very tasty. The old man asked as he filled the hot pancakes. "All right, then give me 2 bowls, no, 3 bowls. Help me pack it up so I can take it away." Good. The old man smiled and quickly packed 3 bowls of mung bean soup for him. Not far away, Murong Yishen, who had accompanied Feng Qingji out of Yushuan Court, inadvertently glanced over and saw the man who was buying things in front of the stall. He couldn't help but be startled as a hint of joy surfaced in his eyes. It was him. The older brother of the woman in red. If he was here, then was the woman in red also here? Thinking of this, his heart could not help but beat. A feeling of nervousness and anticipation filled his heart. "Brother Murong? What's wrong?" Feng Qingji, who was holding his arm, asked doubtfully. Seeing that he was standing still, she followed his gaze and saw a man in ordinary clothes buying scallion pancakes. Chapter 106. Yes, it's a friend. I'll go over and say hi. Wait for me here, he said hurriedly. Seeing that the man was about to leave, he quickly walked over. When Feng Qingge saw this, she felt a little strange. Her gaze fell on the man and sized him up, but she couldn't see anything outstanding about him. Just as Guan Shilin was about to leave, he heard a voice in his ear. "Mr. Murong Yishuan called out." He walked up to him and a gentle smile appeared on his handsome and elegant face. "I didn't expect to meet you here in Yunyu City after we parted at Stone Forest Town." Guan Shilin looked at him in confusion. "You are..." He didn't remember this person at all. Seeing that he didn't remember him, Murong Yishuan's smile froze. However, he quickly recovered and said, "My surname is Murong and my name is Yishuan." "Murong Yishuan?" Guan Shilin was slightly stunned. Then, he looked at him in surprise and excitement. He even raised his voice slightly. "You're Murong Yishuan?" The third prince of glorious Sun Country, the martial arts genius. As a member of Yunyu City's Guan clan, he had naturally heard of Murong Yixian's name before. However, he had never seen him before. He only knew that this person was not only well known, he was also a cultivation genius of the new generation. He was the pride of the heavens. He didn't expect to meet him today. Thinking of this, he was excited. Third Prince, I've wanted to meet you for a long time. I didn't expect to meet you on the street. What fate. Before he could speak, he said, do you know? You've always been my goal. I used to work hard so that I could defeat you. Hearing the first few words, Murong Yishuan's smile deepened. He was about to ask if his sister was here. However, after hearing the last few words, his smile froze. He thought to himself, this person is really rude. However, he didn't mind and smiled. I haven't asked for your name yet. My name is Guan Shalin. He reported his name without hesitation. So it's Mr. Guan. Is your sister with you? When he walked over, he noticed that there were many snacks in his hand. Was he buying them for his sister? She liked to eat these. Hearing him mention his baby sister, Guan Shalin stopped smiling and stared at him warily. Why are you asking about my baby sister? You don't even know her. It's like this. Previously in Stone Forest Town, I unintentionally offended your sister. I've been looking for an opportunity to apologize to her, but I've never been able to meet her. They had met. That time at the Peach Blossom Cove, he had seen her like a flower demon. Ever since he came back, he had been in a trance. His heart could not help but sink. In fact, during this period of time, he had been thinking about his relationship with Song Chinga. He wanted to find a suitable opportunity to tell her about it, but he couldn't find the right time. The hand holding the scallion pancake waved his hand. No need, my little sister is very magnanimous, she won't care about any offense. She won't care about it because you haven't angered her yet. If you angered her, she wouldn't care about magnanimity. Ah, she's still waiting for my scallion pancakes. That's all, I'll leave first. Thinking about his little sister, everything else was trivial. He didn't even have the mood to chat with him. He quickly ran to the carriage, afraid that she would wait too long. Mr. Guan. Murong Yishuan's gaze followed the direction he ran to and fell on the carriage parked at the side. His heart skipped a beat. Chapter 107. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but follow. Feng Chinga, who was behind them, frowned slightly when she saw this. She glanced at the inconspicuous carriage before moving forward to follow them. On the other side, Guan Shalin came to the side of the carriage and handed a scallion pancake to Leng Shuang. This is for you. There's also some mung bean soup. Eat it while it's hot before we leave. Leng Shuang glanced at him and reached out to take it, thanking him. He stepped into the carriage and lifted the curtain with one hand to go in. He said, Little Nine, the scallion pancakes are still warm. That uncle said that they taste very good together with the mung bean soup, so I brought a portion for each of you. Feng Jiu in the carriage reached out to take the scallion pancake and mung bean soup. She smiled and said, Mung bean soup. I haven't had it in a long time. Brother, thank you. Hehe, what are you thanking me for? As long as you like it. We'll buy a few maids back and let them serve you and make you delicious food. After being together for so long, he knew that she loved delicious food. Okay. She smiled in response. Seeing him sit back in the carriage, she opened the bag and was about to take a bite of the scallion pancake when she suddenly heard a familiar voice from outside the carriage. Miss Guan, I'm Murong Yixian. Miss Guan? Who was he calling? Feng Jiu in the carriage was slightly startled. She looked at her cheap brother who was also startled and silently asked, What's going on? Guan Shalin took a bite of the scallion pancake and said, I just met him when I was shopping. His name is Murong Yixian. He said he offended you last time in Stone Forest Town and wanted to apologize. Speaking of this, he was slightly annoyed and said, I just told him that he didn't need to, but he still followed me. I really don't know what he wants. I'd better go down and take a look. He put down the scallion pancake in his hand and was about to lift the curtain and jump off the carriage when he suddenly turned back and said to Feng Jiu, Xiaoju, put on your veil. The scar on Xiao Ju's face hadn't healed yet. She always wore a veil when she went out. He didn't want others to look at her with dirty eyes after seeing the scar on her face. Fengjiu smiled as he put on the veil. He felt a little strange. What was Murong Yishuan trying to do? Murong Yishen, who was waiting outside the carriage, was a little nervous at this moment. His palms were slightly sweaty. He looked at the carriage with anticipation. Would she lift the curtain? Did she remember the 2 times she had met him by chance? When Leng Shuang, who was driving the carriage outside, saw the trace of expectation on Murong Yishen's face, he couldn't help but frown and looked at him strangely. What was Murong Yishen trying to do? Based on what she knew, wasn't he engaged to the Feng Manor's young miss, Feng Qingge? Why was he looking at the carriage with such an expectant and nervous expression? The curtain of the carriage was lifted by Guan Shilin and he walked down. He casually let down the curtain and looked at Murong Yishen, who was standing in front of the carriage. Didn't I say that you don't need to apologize? Why did you still follow me? At this moment, Murong Yishen was looking at the carriage in a daze. When he thought of the appearance of the woman in the carriage when the curtain was lifted, his heart began to thump. Today, she wasn't wearing red clothes. Instead, she was wearing a white dress. Her face was covered with a veil of the same color. She just sat there quietly, her entire body exuding an elegant and refined aura. She appeared so serene and elegant. Chapter 108. Guan Shilin, who was waiting for his reply, saw that he was staring at the carriage behind him in a daze and his face immediately darkened. He took a step to the left and his large body blocked his way. I say, what are you looking at? Brother Murong, do you know the person in the carriage? Feng Qingge slowly walked over and asked in a soft voice. Her gaze also landed on the carriage. Then, she shifted her gaze to Guan Shilin and revealed a faint smile. This young master, since you are my big brother Murong's friend, then you are also my, Feng Qingge's, friend. Which of you is inside the carriage? Why don't you come out and meet me? She had been watching for quite a while and was really puzzled. The dazed expression on Murong Yishen's face made her feel a sense of crisis for the first time since she took over Feng Qingge's identity. That gaze was too familiar and it made her heart tremble. Once, she had quietly watched from the side just like she did just now, watching him use that kind of gentle and affectionate gaze to look at Feng Qingge. However, ever since she took over this identity, she felt that he had always lacked the affection and gentleness that he used to have for Feng Qingge. Even when he looked at her, said gentle words and was very considerate towards her, she was still sensitive enough to sense it. This made her uneasy, but she didn't dare to look into it, afraid that the final result would be something she couldn't bear. She had always ignored it and kept telling herself that she was overthinking it. But just now, she had stood there and watched him lift the curtain and the man inside the carriage. The gaze he had looked into the carriage almost made her collapse. Without looking, a woman's intuition told her that the person in the carriage was a woman. However, what kind of woman was she? How could she make him lose his composure like this? Guan Shilin looked at her as if he was looking at an idiot. Am I very familiar with you? Is my sister very familiar with you? If you want to see her, does she have to come out and let you see her? Hearing this, Feng Qingge's expression turned ugly, but she did not flare up. Instead, she turned her head towards the carriage and softly said, Miss, it's fate that brought us together. Why don't you come out and meet me? In the carriage, Fengjiu was playing with a strand of hair that had fallen to his chest. His eyes were slightly narrowed, and the corners of his lips under the veil held a playful and demonic smile. His voice was neither fast nor slow, and it carried 3 parts laziness and 7 parts indifference. Do I know you? Why should I go out to see you? Hearing the voice coming from the carriage, Feng Qingge was slightly startled. It seemed to be a little familiar. She wasn't the only one who had this feeling. Even Murong Yishen was slightly startled. That voice was somewhat similar to Qing Ji's, but it was also somewhat different. Because that voice was filled with a casual laziness, it was very seductive. Perhaps it was the familiar voice that made her feel uneasy, for she walked past Guan Shilin and reached the side of the carriage to lift the curtain. However, before her hand could touch the curtain, it was caught by a pair of large hands. What are you doing? Guan Shilin's eyes widened and his face darkened. He stared at this beautiful woman with an extremely displeased expression. He felt that her brain was filled with faces and she couldn't understand human language at all. "Let go," Feng Qingge berated, frowning as she looked at the hand that was holding her wrist. Guan Shilin pulled her back 2 steps before letting go of her hand. His face was filled with disgust. "If you didn't want to lift the curtain, do you think I wanted to hold your hand?" "Pa. Qingge." Murong Yixian's expression changed slightly and he quickly stepped forward. Chapter 109. He hadn't done anything bad, had he? Why did this woman slap him? In his entire life, he had never been slapped by anyone before. He was furious but he didn't make a move. He was a man, he couldn't possibly hit a woman on the streets, right? Leng Shuang, who was holding the reins, had a cold look in his eyes. Just as he was about to get off the carriage, he saw the carriage's curtains being lifted by a pair of slender, fair hands. "Miss," he called out and hurriedly lifted the curtains to let her out. Feng Jiu bent over and walked out of the carriage. She held on to Leng Shuang and lightly lifted the hem of her skirt as she got off the carriage. She looked at her cheapskate brother whose hands were tightly clenched into fists and saw the slap mark on his face. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she looked at the 2 people and slowly walked forward. When Murong Yixian saw the woman dressed in white coming down from the carriage, his eyes immediately lit up. When he saw her graceful and unhurried figure walking towards him, his heart couldn't help but feel nervous and a faint trace of anticipation. When Feng Qingge saw the woman dressed in white coming down from the carriage, she was completely stupefied. That figure, that posture, it was actually so familiar. As if. Slap. Slap. 2 resounding slaps rang out, waking the 2 people up with a start. It also stunned the surrounding passers-by who were looking at them. Due to their outstanding appearances and the fact that they were on the streets, the surrounding people had long been paying attention to them. After all, Murong Yixian and Feng Qingge were influential figures in Yunyu City. What they didn't expect was that Feng Qingge would suddenly raise her hand and slap that man. What they didn't expect even more was that the veiled woman dressed in white coming down from the carriage would actually raise her hand and slap Feng Qingge twice after walking slowly towards them. They were left speechless. This scene was too explosive. Feng Qingge covered her burning face in disbelief. Her eyes were almost spitting fire as she stared at the woman in white. You actually dare to hit me?" Feng Jiu casually swung her hand that hurt and didn't even look at her as she earnestly instructed the stunned Guan Shilin. "Brother, did you see that? When someone slaps you, you have to return 2 slaps. This is the etiquette of reciprocity. We can't be impolite." Guan Shilin's eyes lit up as he looked at her with worship. He nodded heavily. Brother will remember. If there's a next time, I don't care if she's a man or a woman, I'll hit her first." That's right." She nodded with a smile and said, "It's getting late. Let's not let irrelevant people waste our time. Let's go." "All right." Guan Shilin's face was filled with a joyful smile. He couldn't be bothered with the 2 anymore. In his opinion, his precious little sister had already helped him pay back the slap twice as much. As a man, he naturally wouldn't haggle over it with that woman. Unrelated person. Murong Yixian stared blankly at her back as she turned and left, her words echoing in his mind. That's right. Wasn't he an unrelated person? He wasn't anyone to her. What right did he have to see her whenever he wanted to? However, why did he feel so disappointed after hearing her words and seeing her turn and leave without even looking at him? "Stop right there." Feng Qingge shot forward and blocked Feng Jiu with a face full of anger. "You want to leave after hitting me? Not so easy." Chapter 110. Feng Jiu had long been on guard against her. Seeing her reach out to take off her veil, she naturally hid behind Guan Shilin beside her. Her hands tightly clutched the clothes on his back as she blinked her beautiful eyes and said in a wronged tone, "Brother, she's bullying me." Murong Yixian was slightly startled. He didn't expect that the elegant and calm girl would suddenly hide behind her brother and reveal such a wronged and delicate gaze. Moreover, her soft words were filled with grievance and accusation. He couldn't help but want to stand in front of her to protect her and be her support. Seeing his precious little sister hiding behind him and complaining about that girl's rude behavior with that wronged voice, Guan Shilin glared at her, puffed out his chest and put his hands on his waist to push her up. What are you doing? How can you be so rude? You even said you're General Feng's daughter. General Feng's famous name, how could he have raised such a rude daughter? I think you're 80% fake. His voice was very loud and there was a hint of straightforwardness in his rough voice. Without waiting for Feng Qingge to respond, he saw that there were quite a few people surrounding them and loudly said, "Everyone, what do you think? Isn't this girl a little too rude? We don't know her, but she came up and slapped me and even wanted to take off my little sister's veil. Don't you think that's too outrageous?" Feng Qingge had no choice but to retreat because he had puffed out his chest and pushed it towards her. However, the moment she heard his words, she became extremely angry. Especially when she saw that there were already quite a few people around her who were pointing and gossiping about her while Murong Xian, who was on her mind, was currently staring foolishly at the woman in white who was hiding behind her elder brother. When he didn't stand out to speak up for her, she felt even more embarrassed. She glanced at him with grievance and sadness. Her eyes reddened slightly as she covered her face and quickly ran away. "Ari, your beauty ran away crying," Feng Jiu said with a smile. Looking at Murong Xian, who was still looking at her, she felt that all men had bad tempers. They were eating from the bowl and still wanted to look at the plate. Murong Xian looked at her with a complicated gaze but didn't say anything. He only cupped his hands and bowed to her before walking away. "Brother, let's go. We've wasted quite a bit of time here." She patted his arm, indicating for him to enter the carriage. "All right." Guan Shilin responded with a grin. Looking at Feng Jiu, who was getting into the carriage, he suddenly stopped and asked in confusion, "Xiao Ju, why do I feel that the woman just now looks a little like you?" When Feng Jiu, who had lifted the curtain and was about to enter the carriage, heard this, a trace of surprise flashed through her eyes. She turned her head and smiled. How so? She didn't expect her cheap brother to be so meticulous despite his careless appearance. Guan Shilin scratched his head and thought for a moment. Their figures and physiques are similar, but their temperaments are different. Their faces and eyes are also somewhat similar. She smiled as she entered the carriage and sat down. She waved at him, "Quickly come up." "Oh." Only then did he stride into the carriage, lift the curtain, and sit inside. The Lung Shuang outside waited for them to sit down before continuing to drive the carriage to the Guan family. Feng Jiu, who was in the carriage, took off her veil and looked at him with a smile. "Brother, your eyes are brighter than some people's." "Ah!" He was a little stunned. He didn't understand these words that came out of nowhere. "You'll know in the future." Chapter 111. Today, the Guan residence was as crowded as a marketplace. There were many carriages parked outside the residence. They were all invited to watch the competition for the position of the young master of the Guan family. The people who came today were those who were on good terms with the Guan family, as well as those who were of similar strength as the Guan family. When Lung Shuang drove the carriage to the gate of the Guan mansion, she could faintly hear the cheers of the competition from inside. She stopped the carriage and said to the two people in the carriage, "Young master, miss, we're here." The curtain opened and Guan Shilin jumped off the carriage. He reached out his hand and said, "Xiao Ju, come, let me help you." The two guards at the gate widened their eyes when they saw Guan Shilin. "Isn't that young Master Shilin? Isn't he dead? Why is he still alive?" The expressions of the two guards changed greatly, but one of them recovered and hurriedly ran inside to report. Feng Jiu helped him down the carriage. She looked at the carriages parked outside the Guan residence and said with a smile, "Brother, it seems to be quite lively today. Yes, all the families of the same level will come to watch the competition." His eyes fell on the plaque above the gate. The Guan residence. This was his home, but it felt so foreign and cold to him. "Young Master Shilin, young master." The guard at the gate quickly came forward and bowed. She looked at him with bewilderment, and then secretly sized up the white-clothed woman beside him, who had an outstanding temperament. Everyone in the Guan residence said he was dead, but how did he come back alive? "Has the competition started?" Guan Shilin looked at him and asked in a low voice. At this moment, He exuded a rough and steady aura. Just the change in his aura was not something he could compare to a few months ago. It's starting. Under the pressure of his aura, the guard couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Hearing this, Guan Shilin strode inside, followed by Fengjiu. Leng Shuang stayed by her side. After they entered, the guard could not help but wipe the cold sweat off his forehead as he muttered, "It's only been a few months. How did young Master Shi Lin's aura become so frightening?" Thinking of Ku Xinya, who was already married to young Master Wan, the guard was curious. If young Master Shi Lin returned and found out that his fiancée had become young Master Wan's wife, what would he do? It was a pity that he had to guard the door and couldn't go in to see what was going on. Otherwise, he really wanted to go in and take a look. As for inside, below the competition stage, those sitting in the front row were the main figures of the Guan family, as well as the family heads. In the back row were the younger generation of the Guan family, as well as the children of the family heads. They chatted from time to time while watching the competition on the stage. The Guan family patriarch's son, Guan Shi Wan, had already won 8 or 9 rounds in a row. No one in the Guan family's generation was a match for him, so the family patriarchs kept praising him. Young Master Guan is really a young hero. He has the demeanor of a family head. To have such strength at such a young age, his future is limitless. The Guan family patriarch's face was full of pride when he heard this, but he still smiled modestly and said, "It's all thanks to everyone's praise. Which of the family head's sons isn't a dragon among men? I often tell him that when he has time, he has to learn more from the young masters." Chapter 112. Of course, the clan heads in the first row also saw the steward coming in a hurry. After the steward whispered something in Master Guan's ear, Master Guan's face slightly changed as he stood up. "Everyone, this old man will excuse himself for a moment." After he finished speaking, he did not wait for anyone to react and followed the steward out. "Heh. Let's keep watching. My father must have remembered something," Master Guan said to the other clan heads with a smile. He was confused. What made my father's face change? Ku Xinya, who was sitting with the women of the Guan family, was now the young madam of the Guan family. Naturally, she was also watching the competition on the stage. Previously, when she saw her husband standing on the stage with no one being a match for him, her heart soared. She thought, "She is right. She made the right choice." However, when she saw the steward rushing in and the old master leaving, her originally joyous mood could not help but tighten. Her hands unconsciously clenched the corner of her clothes, and her face turned slightly pale. When the steward left with Master Guan, he glanced at her and reminded her of Guan Shilin. Could it be that he really came? Is he really here? Before Guan Shilin and Fengjiu could step into the arena, a deep and old voice called out to them. "Come on, let's go. Shilin. Is it really you?" Master Guan walked over with his walking stick. When he saw the tall man, he was surprised. There was confusion in his eyes, but he wasn't surprised. Guan Shilin saw the expression on Master Guan's face. He was a bit cold. He twisted his lips and said, "Grandpa, you." Master Guan wanted to ask, "Why did you come back?" However, he changed his mind and said, "It's good that you are back. Go back to the yard and have a rest. Come to the study later. I want to talk to you. The Ku family must have told Grandpa that I'm still alive." He looked at Master Guan and didn't move. "Aren't you curious? Why did my cousin tell you that I am dead?" "Grandfather, shouldn't you tell me how my fiancée became my cousin's wife?" As an elder, Master Guan's face turned dark when he was questioned by a young man. He frowned and looked at Guan Shilin angrily. "What are you talking about? Do you want to question me as soon as you come back? Didn't you hear me? I told you to come to the study later. You haven't been back for a few months. You have changed. You don't even know the rules, do you? Grandpa, you don't feel happy that I am alive." Master Guan didn't know what to say. He was embarrassed. Guan Shilin looked at him indifferently. He didn't care about Master Guan's reaction. "Stop." Master Guan stepped in front of him and frowned. "Where are you going? Isn't the clan competition today? Don't I have to participate?" Today is the competition for the position of the young master. You are not Shi Yuan's match. You don't have to participate. Master Guan spoke in a deep voice. He looked at Guan Shilin's face and said, "Since you are back, go back to the yard and have a rest. Don't embarrass me." Chapter 113. He looked at his grandfather, and the smile on his face slowly disappeared. The intimidating aura of iron and blood also spread out from his body, and a rough voice with a firm tone came out from his mouth. "No. I came back today to participate in the competition. Grandpa, don't worry. I'm not interested in the position of the young master of the Guan family. I just want to ask my cousin for advice." As soon as he finished speaking, he strode forward, not giving him a chance to stop him. Grandpa Guan was also stunned at that moment. He was surprised to see the sudden change in Guan Shilin's aura. That strong and cold aura made him feel like he saw his father's shadow in Guan Shilin. For a moment, he was in a daze. Fengjiu, who had been watching from the side, smiled under the veil. She looked at Grandpa Guan, who was in a daze, and walked forward. Leng Shuang, who was dressed in black, naturally stood behind her, silently protecting her. When the tall and strong Guan Shilin walked in with steady steps, Guan Shilin, who had just won another round, suddenly stared at him as if he had seen a ghost. He lost his composure and exclaimed, "You, how are you still alive?" His face turned deathly pale. He found it hard to believe, yet he was also a little panicked. There was also a little bit of a guilty conscience. He thought he was dead. In a place like Jufulin, he couldn't have survived with such a serious injury. But why was he still alive? Why didn't anyone tell him that he was still alive? There was another person who also lost her composure. It was Kuxinya. Almost as soon as she saw Guan Shilin, she instinctively stood up. She was shocked, angry, and a little proud. She thought that Guan Shilin came to the Guan family to participate in the competition because of her. Because he couldn't let go of her, because he still thought of her. This greatly satisfied her vanity. At the same time, she was angry. She thought that he came to embarrass her. Because she was his fiancée, but now she was his cousin's wife. She was afraid that she couldn't bear to see the two men on and off the stage. Because of Guan Shihuan's exclamation and Kuxinya's loss of composure, the audience was somewhat surprised and followed her gaze. When he saw it, he was a little surprised and also a little stunned. The former was because of the tall and muscular masculine man, while the latter was because of the veiled woman following behind the man. Let's not talk about the patriarchs for now. Just the sons sitting in the row behind them, after sizing up Guan Shilin, all looked at the woman in white with amazement. None of them concealed their curiosity and interest in her. After all, they were all men. Their mentality was the same. When they saw a woman with a graceful figure and a refined temperament, they would naturally take a few more looks with interest. Especially since the woman's face was still covered by a veil. Although her appearance could not be seen clearly, her pure aura and the pair of beautiful eyes that were exposed outside the veil were enough to show that under the veil was definitely a delicate and charming face. It was human nature to love beauty, so they didn't think it was inappropriate to stare at other women. Chapter 114. In the end, it was Master Guan who came back to his senses first. He stood up and walked towards Guan Shilin with a big smile. He said excitedly, "Shilin, you're back. Everyone in the family has been very worried about you these days. Where have you been? Why didn't you send a message back?" Shilin. Guan Shilin. Everyone looked at each other. Didn't they say that he went to Jufulin with his family but left in a fit of anger because he didn't listen to the leader's orders? Then he was killed by a beast. How did he manage to come back alive? They all heard that Guan Shilin's wife was Guan Shilin's fiancée. Now that he came back, his fiancée became his cousin's woman. Although they didn't show it on their faces, everyone was still waiting for a good show. They didn't say anything and just looked at the people in front of them. Guan Shilin looked at him and didn't say anything. His face was gloomy and there was no trace of a smile on his face. Seeing his expressionless face, Master Guan's expression also changed. He asked in a low voice, "What's wrong? Uncle asked you a question. Why didn't you answer?" Guan Shilin's gaze landed on his cousin, who was trying his best to suppress his panic and guilt. His voice was cold as he said, "I'm here to participate in the competition." As he spoke, he had already stepped forward. Master Guan was startled. He frowned and looked at him. He wanted to stop him but didn't say anything. In his opinion, he was not his son's opponent. He would only be asking for trouble if he went up. On the stage, Guan Shilin watched him walk over step by step. His panic gradually calmed down. From the moment he appeared until now, he hadn't said that he was the one who stabbed him in the back. He probably wouldn't say it here. After all, this was a family scandal. He had to take care of the Guan family's reputation. Thinking of this, his expression relaxed. His tense heart also relaxed. He smiled and said, "Shilin, it's good that you're back." Guan Shilin walked up the stage and looked at him with a gloomy face. "I thought you didn't want me to come back." Hearing this, the smile on Guan Shiwan's face froze. He said awkwardly, "How could that be? Shilin, are you blaming me for marrying Xinya?" "Actually, it was our elders who made the decision for me to marry Xinya. At that time, we all thought that you had died in Jofu Forest, so..." Everyone nodded their heads when they heard this. Guan Shilin didn't look too good. He was probably angry that his fiancée had become his cousin's woman. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so rude to Master Guan. When Ku Xinya heard the words from the stage, she had a look of self-blame on her face. Her voice was soft and gentle as she said, "Shilin, I was arranged by the elders of both parties to cancel the engagement and marry Shiwan. I hope that you won't be at odds with your family because of me. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame us for not being fated to be together." However, when she heard Guan Shilin's next words, her face turned pale and embarrassed. Guan Shilin glanced at her. He crossed his arms and said with disdain, "You think too highly of yourself. I, Guan Shilin, am not interested in a fickle and vain woman." "Guan Shilin, you've gone too far." Ku Xinya's father slammed the table and stood up. Hearing his daughter being humiliated in public, his face was full of anger. Chapter 115. Ku Shilin's father choked and glared at Guan Shilin. Her decision was made by the elders of both sides. "It's perfectly justifiable. She's not as unbearable as you say. Whether she's unbearable or not, everyone knows it in their heart." Guan Shilin coldly snorted and no longer paid attention to them. Instead, he looked at Guan Shilin and cupped his fist. "Cousin, please enlighten me." On the side of the stage, Fengjiu stood not far from the stage and watched the scene on the stage. Suddenly, a man came over. "Miss, there's a seat over there. Why don't we sit down and watch?" A man in embroidered clothes came in front of Fengjiu and blocked her view. Then, he gestured for her to sit. Fengjiu frowned and looked at the man in front of her. "No need." She stepped to the left and looked at the stage again. The family heads on the other side were paying attention to the movements on the stage, but the young men in the back row were looking at them from time to time. When they saw that the girl didn't even want to pay attention to the man, they couldn't help but laugh. Although the girl was beautiful, she was in someone else's home. They couldn't just go up and strike up a conversation with her. Moreover, their father was also here. They had to restrain their every move and couldn't step out of line. The man just spoke and was about to step forward when he saw a black figure come up and reach out to block his path. The black figure warned, "Stay away from my family's young lady." The man frowned and was about to speak when he heard a cry of pain from the stage. He couldn't help but look back. What he saw startled him. The two people on the stage had already started fighting. It was Guan Shilin and Guan Shilin. However, how could Guan Shilin's aura be so strong? Even though they were below the stage, they could still feel the intimidating aura emanating from him. It was no wonder that Guan Shilin was punched in the eye and cried out in pain. He looked at his father and the family heads in the front row. Sure enough, he saw the surprise on their faces. Bang bang bang. As Guan Shiwan covered his eyes in pain and retreated, Guan Shilin did not stop his attack. Instead, he took a big step forward and lowered his body slightly, throwing out 3 consecutive punches. The punches that were imbued with profound energy landed heavily on Guan Shiwan's abdomen, giving him no chance to retaliate. Blood even seeped out from the corner of his mouth. Family Head's face was dark and solemn. His sharp eyes stared at Guansheline, who was on the stage. He found it strange that his strength could improve so quickly in a few short months. Furthermore, the profound energy aura on his body had exploded during the battle. That aura was obviously that of a martial practitioner at the Full Circle realm. Could it be that he had a fortuitous encounter? Otherwise, how could his strength be so fast? Watching his son on the stage, Guansheline his hand. If this continues, Sheline his, he, Guansheline his, Sheline s Guan, brother Xi's, brother Sheline's Xi's s, how ss. That's right. During the last year's competition, he was beaten up by brother Sheline until he was bedridden for 3 days. The Guan family's disciples below the stage were discussing in low voices. They looked at Guansheline in amazement. The next scene instantly silenced the discussion. Guansheline. Chapter 116. When the audience saw this scene, they all had different expressions. The family's competitions were generally based on profound strength and martial skills. Therefore, very few people would use their swords. Guan Shihuan, who couldn't win with his bare hands, took out his weapon. Once he took out his weapon, the nature of the competition was different. Moreover, because he took out his weapon, even if he won, it wouldn't be honorable. What's more, from their point of view, Guan Shihuan's strength was no match for Guansheline. As the patriarchs of the family, if they couldn't even make this kind of judgment, then they wouldn't be able to hold the position of patriarch. Seeing his son take out his sword, Patriarch Guan's face turned extremely ugly, but he didn't say anything to stop it. Instead, he let the situation continue to develop. Today was the young patriarch's election. His son must win. As for Guansheline, when he saw Guan Shihuan take out his sword, his expression didn't change. His hands clenched into fists, and his knuckles cracked. Suddenly, a visible Xian energy aura gushed out from his body. Hiss! What a strong Xian energy aura! The patriarchs below the stage exclaimed when they saw the Xian energy aura gushing out from his body. 1 or 2 of them even stood up involuntarily with shock in their eyes. With Guansheline's age, he had Xian energy aura that was comparable to theirs. What did this mean? It was already self-evident. This boy was definitely not someone to be trifled with. Ku Xinya's father was also a discerning person. When he saw the aura gushing out from Guansheline's body, he was stunned and couldn't help but murmur, "I misjudged. I actually misjudged." Ku Xinya also looked at Guansheline in shock. Her body trembled slightly, and she couldn't believe what she was seeing. How could he be so strong? How did he become so strong? Below the stage, Grandfather Guan, who had followed them in, looked at the brave and powerful Guansheline on the stage. He seemed to be reminded of his most outstanding son. His old eyes were filled with confusion as he looked at the strong and intimidating figure on the stage. For a moment, he was filled with complex emotions. It was also at this moment that Guansheline, who was on the stage, suddenly dashed out. His speed was so fast that several figures appeared on the stage. He leaped forward and grabbed Guan Shihuan's wrist. His hand bent down, and with a cracking sound, Guan Shihuan let out a scream. Hiss! Clang! Guan Shihuan's sword fell to the ground with a crisp sound. The audience also stood up in shock and looked at Guansheline in disbelief. Phantom shift. He actually managed to cultivate phantom shift. All the patriarchs were shocked, but no one cared that he had broken Guan Shihuan's hand. What they cared about was that he had cultivated a movement technique that allowed him to dispel illusions. Even they might not be able to cultivate that kind of movement technique, but he, a young man in his 20s, actually managed to cultivate it. For a moment, the gazes of all the patriarchs looking at him became extremely hot, as if a group of lecherous old ghosts had seen a peerless beauty stripped naked. They wished they could immediately pounce on him and swallow him whole, and take him for themselves. At this moment, even Grandfather Guan's eyes were shining with excitement. His body was trembling with excitement. He slammed the crutch in his hand into the ground and laughed excitedly. Chapter 117. Everyone was shocked and pleasantly surprised. Only the clan head of the Guan family's face was as black as a clay pot. It was so gloomy that water could drip out. He clenched his fists and stared at Guan Shalin, who was on the stage. A cold killing intent flashed in his eyes. Guan Shalin's hand was broken and his other hand was pinned on the stage. He couldn't move his body at all. His face was pressed against the stage, so he couldn't even scream. Guan Shalin stared at his cousin who had been defeated by him with a complicated look in his eyes. Initially, he wanted to cripple his cousin's hand. However, when he thought of the times when they had cultivated together when they were young, he could not help but soften his heart. You lost. He retracted his hand, averted his gaze, and looked below the stage. The stab in the back in the Jofu forest had already cut off their brotherly relationship. Today, he defeated his cousin and proved himself to them. He wanted to tell them that he, Guan Shalin, was no worse than anyone else. You're really a young hero. Master Guan, your grandson has really shocked us. Congratulations, Master Guan. Your son is so outstanding. His future is limitless. Seeing that the winner had been decided, the heads of the families all congratulated Master Guan on the side. With such a genius in the family's rise was just around the corner. Ha ha ha, thank you, thank you. Master Guan couldn't close his mouth from laughing. When he looked at the stage with a smile and a gratified look, his face suddenly changed, and he exclaimed out loud. Stop! Everyone was shocked. They followed his gaze, and when they saw it, they were also astonished. Guan Shiwan, who had just climbed up from the stage, pulled out a dagger hidden in his boot. His eyes were filled with ruthlessness and madness as he stared at Guan Shalin, whose back was facing him. Guan Shalin, who had his back facing Guan Shalin, didn't even turn his head. Instead, he turned around and kicked Guan Shalin. Guan Shalin, who was holding a dagger, screamed as he flew several meters away and rolled off the stage. Poof! Guan Shalin fell off the stage and spat out a mouthful of blood. He was lying on the ground and didn't even have the strength to stand up. Shalin! The Guan family's master exclaimed and quickly ran over to help him up. Father, kill him. He gripped his father's sleeves tightly with both hands, blood flowing out of his mouth as he spoke with difficulty. Ku Xinya was dumbfounded. She stared blankly at the scene that happened one after another. She felt as if the whole sky was falling down. The strong impact made her unable to calm down. Her blood rushed to her throat, and she felt salty in her throat. Pu. She spat out a mouthful of blood, her vision went black, and she fainted. Xinya. Father and Mother Ku exclaimed in a trembling voice and hurriedly caught her. Looking at the chaotic scene, everyone was stunned. Isn't this Guan clan too messy? The son of the master of the Guan family had lost the competition for the position of the young master of the Guan family, yet he still wanted to kill someone with a knife. Now, he was sent flying by Guan Shalin's kick. Even they were shocked by the strength of Guan Shalin's kick. They estimated that he would be bedridden for at least half a month. However, compared to his killing intent, Guan Shalin's kick was considered merciful. Otherwise, with Guan Shalin's strength, it would be a piece of cake for him to turn around and kill Guan Shalin. Chapter 118. Everybody was surprised when they heard her call him brother. They didn't know Guan Shalin had a sister. Is she from a branch of the Guan clan? Are you from the Guan clan? The man beside Fengjiu asked curiously. He thought, if she is from the Guan clan, I will ask my father to propose marriage to her. That way, I can build a good relationship with the Guan clan and get the girl. Why not? Why don't I remember you from the Guan clan? Guan glanced at Fengjiu and spoke in a deep voice. Fengjiu blinked and said in surprise, Don't flatter yourself. When did I say that I'm a member of your Guan family? How dare you? Don't bully my sister. Guan Shalin, who was on the stage, also shouted after old Master Guan. His voice was as fierce as his grandfather's. Everyone was stunned and couldn't react for a long time. Is he stupid? Guan Shalin is his grandfather. How dare he talk to him like that? Guan Shalin's face turned red. Nobody knew if he was ashamed or angry. His body was shaking, and he hit the floor with his walking stick. He shouted, Rebel! Are you all rebelling? Are you all rebelling? Do you all know the rules? Guan Shalin didn't flinch. He looked at Guan Shalin's angry eyes. He stood up straight and looked at his grandfather with determination in his eyes. Master Guan Shalin panicked. Just as he was about to open his mouth and ask everyone to leave, he heard a voice full of energy and profound energy coming out of his mouth, clearly entering the ears of everyone below. I, Guan Shalin, announce that I am leaving the clan. From now on, I have nothing to do with the people in the clan. The man's voice resounded. It was like thunder striking in everybody's heart. They were shocked and took a cold breath. They couldn't believe it. Leaving the clan? Was he crazy? There was a difference between having the protection of a clan and not having the protection of a clan. What did it mean for a disciple with such outstanding talent to ask to leave the clan? That would mean that he would be cut off from his cultivation resources, and without the protection of his family, he would become a loner. The master of the Guan family gave his son to the guards to help him back to the courtyard. He looked at Guan Shalin on the stage with a sullen face. His eyes flashed, but he didn't say anything. Grandpa Guan was so angry that he was trembling. He pointed at him and said, "You. Say it again if you dare." Guan Shalin's eyes were dark, and his voice was stiff as he said, "Even if I say it 100 times, it's still the same. I, Guan Shalin, will voluntarily leave the clan. Brother Shi Lin, you've won the competition. You're the young master of the Guan family. How can you leave the family on your own accord?" Below the stage, a young man looked at Guan Shalin worriedly and shouted, "Hurry up and apologize to Grandpa. He won't hold it against you. I don't care if you agree or not. That's all I have to say today. This is also the reason why I came back today. I won't stay in the Guan family any longer." Chapter 119. Guan Shalin fearlessly looked into his eyes and said, "Don't you know whether they have mistreated me or not? I don't have parents in the Guan clan. Don't you know whether they have mistreated me or not?" Master Guan's lips were trembling, but he couldn't say a word. They raised him, but they didn't care about him. When they heard that he was dead, they didn't even feel sad. They cancelled his engagement and let Shi Wan marry his fiancée. When they knew that he was still alive, they hoped that he wouldn't come back. When he came back to the Guan clan, Master Guan tried to stop him. He didn't want him to participate in the competition. The Guan family has raised you for so long, and you have the nerve to compete with your grandfather. You even said that you want to leave the family. I think your conscience has been eaten by a dog. The Guan family master shouted sternly. His face was full of righteousness, and he had the demeanor of a family master. Ha 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 ha. Guan Shalin raised his head and laughed. Suddenly, he stopped laughing. He took off his robe and showed the wound on his abdomen. "Do you know how I got this scar?" He walked down from the stage and came to the front of Master Guan. Step by step, he approached him and asked, "Do you know how this scar came about?" "Let me tell you, it was your son, my cousin, who stabbed me in the back with a knife and left it there." As soon as these words came out, everyone gasped in disbelief. The entire scene fell silent and everyone held their breaths. It was so quiet that even a pin dropping to the ground could be heard. "Bullshit." The master of the Guan family shouted loudly. His whole body was trembling with anger. However, there was a voice in his heart telling him that it was true. Otherwise, he wouldn't dare to say it in front of so many people. Master Guan almost fainted. He almost fainted. Brothers killing each other. It was a family scandal. Bullshit. Guan Shalin tied his belt and said, "He wanted to kill me from the back with a dagger. Do you think we are all blind? Do you think I can stay in the Guan clan? If you stay, you won't even know when you'll be killed." He looked at Master Guan and said, "Today, I just want to tell you that I don't need your permission. From now on, the rules of the Guan family are useless to me. You'd better leave them to teach the Guan family's disciples." He strode towards Fengjiu and said, "Sister, let's go." Everyone looked at each other in dismay. They didn't expect that the Guan family's competition would turn out like this. This was really a good show. First, it was Guan Shalin who was able to use apparition at such a young age. Then, it was Guan Shalin who launched a sneak attack from behind. Then, it was Guan Shalin who asked to leave the clan. Finally, it was revealed that he was rumored to be dead in Jufulin. Even they were shocked by these events, let alone the people from the Guan family. At this moment, seeing the three of them leaving, no one from the Guan family tried to stop them. It was as if they hadn't come back to their senses yet. They also bowed to them and left one after another. They thought that there was a genius in the Guan family. Who knew that he would ask to leave the clan and get involved in the scandal of brothers killing each other? Thinking of this, Master Guan's chest was filled with blood. He couldn't breathe and fainted. Master Guan fainted. Call the doctor. Chapter 120. By the time the family heads arrived outside, they had already seen the inconspicuous horse pass by. As they watched the carriage gradually disappear into the distance, they all clasped their hands in farewell and boarded the carriage. Then, they instructed the servants to pay more attention to Guan Shilin's movements in the future. They all thought that since he had already asked to leave the family, they could try to rope him into their family. After all, from today's battle on the stage, they could all see that this person would be extraordinary in the future. Guan Shilin did not care about the chaos in the Guan family, nor did he care about the gazes of others. In the carriage, he sat silently and did not speak. No one knew what he was thinking. Seeing this, Fengjiu asked, "Brother, do you regret it?" "No." He looked at her and shook his head. "I don't regret asking to leave the family." "Then what are you thinking about?" He was silent for a moment before saying, "I have left the Guan family today and asked to leave the family. However, I want to set up my own family. I want to set up my own family in Yunyu City and have a family that is not inferior to theirs." "Sure. That's a good idea." She smiled and nodded in agreement. "Where do you want to buy a house?" "We can buy it immediately." Guan Shilin shook his head. "Xiao Ju, I don't want to use your money. I want to earn my own money and use my own strength to accomplish this." Hearing this, she wanted to say that there was no need to go through so much trouble. However, seeing that he was looking at her with a serious expression and his eyes flashing with determination, she smiled and said, "All right, then I won't help you. However, where do you plan to place your house? I can help you look at the location." Seeing that she did not insist, Guan Shilin smiled. "Thank you, Xiao Ju. Even if you didn't say this, I would have looked for you. Your foresight is much better than mine." "Of course." She raised her small face and nodded with a proud expression. Her gaze inadvertently fell on the window that was gently lifted by the wind. She caught a glimpse of a figure and could not help but be startled. "Stop the carriage." The Lung Shuang outside pulled on the reins and stopped the carriage. "What's wrong?" Guan Shilin was surprised to see her stand up after putting on the veil. "Brother, you and Lung Shuang go and buy a few servants. I have something to do, so I'll go back later." After saying that, he lifted the curtain and went downstairs. Guan Shilin was startled, but he quickly followed her out. "Xiao Ju, let Lung Shuang follow you. I'll drive the carriage myself." Lung Shuang was about to dismount when he heard her voice. "No need, you can go. I can do it myself." Seeing this, Lung Shuang stopped following them and looked at Guan Shilin. Guan Shilin was silent for a moment and did not insist. He only said, "Since she doesn't want anyone to follow her, then let's go." "She'll be fine." "Yes." Lung Shuang responded. He glanced at his master, who was walking to the side, and then continued to drive the carriage forward. Fengjiu walked forward and arrived in front of a wine shop. She saw an old man holding a wine gourd and sitting in front of the shop, unwilling to leave. For a moment, her eyes became hot and there was an indescribable bitterness in her heart. That was her grandfather. To be exact, it was the original owner's grandfather. It was reasonable to say that she should not have any feelings for him, but when she saw him, all the feelings in her heart surged up. Her grandfather's love for her and his teachings replayed in her mind. It was as if those scenes were yesterday, but also as if she had experienced them herself. Chapter 121. What's wrong with you, old man? Didn't I already give you the wine? Why did you pour it away again? The shopkeeper's eyes widened and even his voice became stiff. Who knew where this old man came from and sat in front of his wine shop? He didn't leave until he gave him the wine and poured it away after he gave him the wine. It really made him anxious. Old Master Feng curled his lips and said with a look of disdain, "Who told you not to give this old man good wine? That wine was as bland as water. Even if you can drink it, this old man can't." The shopkeeper angrily pointed at him and shouted, You old man, whose family are you from? How can you be so unreasonable? You don't want to give me money and you still want to drink good wine? You should be happy that I'm willing to give you that wine, but you still aren't satisfied. I'm warning you, if you don't leave, I won't be polite with you. Old Master Feng swung his wine gourd and hit the shopkeeper's head. He scolded in a stern voice, Impudent. Didn't your parents teach you not to point your finger at your elders? You really are impudent, too impudent. When the surrounding commoners heard this, they couldn't help but laugh out loud. The shopkeeper's face turned red and he even wanted to cry, Old Master, I'm begging you, okay? Have a good heart and leave quickly. Go home quickly and don't block my business. This is only a small business. If you keep sitting in front of my door, how can I do business? Go home. The old man held the wine gourd and tilted his head. He frowned and thought for a bit before saying, Which family is this old man from? I seem to have forgotten again. Hearing this, the shopkeeper directly knelt down. He rushed over and hugged Old Master Feng's thigh, crying and begging, Old Master, I'm begging you, please don't waste your time here. I apologize to you. I shouldn't have shouted at you and shouldn't have been disrespectful to you. A great person like you won't hold a grudge against a lowly person like me. Quickly go home. Old Master Feng's face became stern and he said with disdain, You really are useless. You're already kneeling over such a small matter. You're even crying. Don't you know that men bleed but not tears? Look at what you've become. You're too ugly. I don't even have the face to look at you. As he said this, he actually turned his eyes away and didn't look at the shopkeeper. He pushed the wine gourd towards the shopkeeper and said, Go, bring this old man half a jug of good wine. I want good wine, this old man won't drink inferior wine. The surrounding commoners looked at the innkeeper with sympathy. Someone even shouted, I say, just pour some good wine for the old man. Look at the old man's clothes. He's definitely not an elder from an ordinary family. Do you think he's afraid that you won't be able to pay for the wine? That's right, that's right. I won't skimp on your wine bill. Old Master Feng nodded with a smile and urged, Hurry up, this old man's craving for wine is acting up again. The innkeeper hesitated for a moment before taking the wine gourd inside to fill it with wine. Because he was afraid that the old man would pour the wine away again, this time, it was really top-notch wine. As he filled it, he felt his heart ache, wondering if the old man would be able to fork out the money. And whose family did it belong to? After filling it with good wine, the innkeeper hesitantly handed the wine gourd to him and asked, Old Master, whose family do you belong to? Old Master Feng snatched the wine gourd away and glared at him. Didn't this old man just say it? This old man forgot which family I belong to again. But don't worry, this old man won't skimp on your wine bill. As he spoke, he stood up and unbuttoned his clothes, saying, This old man's clothes are valuable. I'll give them to you as payment for the wine. The innkeeper scowled miserably and said, I don't have any use for your clothes. Chapter 122. When this sudden female voice entered the shopkeeper's ears, he felt as if he had heard the sound of nature. His eyes lit up as he looked towards the direction of the voice. The surrounding people also looked in surprise at the woman slowly walking over. When their eyes fell on her, their eyes lit up and they secretly praised her in their hearts. What an outstanding woman! Although her face was covered by a veil, her clear and elegant temperament made people's eyes light up. They all automatically opened up a path for her to walk forward. Miss, is what you just said true? You know that old master? That's great. I'll have to trouble you to quickly take him away. I've let him delay my business for an entire day. The shopkeeper acted as if he had seen a piece of driftwood that could save his life. Fengjiu threw out a handful of silver. This is the money for the wine. Then she looked at Old Master Feng. When Old Master Feng walked out of Fengjiu's shop, his eyes had been looking at her. When he saw her look over, He couldn't help but grin. With a bit of a mischievous temperament, he curled his lips and asked with a bored expression, Xiao Feng how did you find grandfather again? Xiao Feng how did you find grandfather again? Feng Jiu was slightly startled. She stood there in a daze as she looked at him with a bored expression. She saw that his face clearly had a bored expression, but his eyes couldn't hide the joy and happiness of being found. Because of his words, she remembered the hide-and-seek that grandfather and grandson often played when they were young. Every time she found him, he would ask with a bored and puzzled expression, Xiao Feng how did you find grandfather again? Her heart slightly ached and her eyes became slightly hot. A layer of uncontrollable tears filled her eyes and blurred her vision. Because he recognized her at a glance and because he called her Xiao Feng her heart couldn't help but be moved. Her grandfather had intermittent amnesia. How could he forget where his home was? How could he forget who he was? How could he forget what his son's name was? But he would never forget her. He often said that she was the Feng family's little phoenix and also the treasure in their hands. They loved her, spoiled her, protected her, and gave her the best things just to see her happy. Seeing the tears in her eyes, old Master Feng panicked and hurried forward. Little Feng what's wrong with you? Who bullied you? Tell Grandpa. Grandpa will help you beat him up. In order to show that he would help, he even waved his fists. She shook her head and held his hand, leading him out of the crowd and in the direction of the Feng manor. She walked slowly without saying a word. Old Master Feng, who was beside her, also let her hold his hand and followed obediently. He looked at her carefully from time to time, wondering why she was crying. Little Feng do you still have money? He asked carefully. Feng Jiu stopped and looked at him, then took out a handful of silver and gave it to him. Old Master Feng happily received it and smiled. Wait here for Grandpa. Don't run around. Saying this, he ran off. Not long later, he ran back and handed the things in his hands to her as if they were treasures. Here, Grandpa bought you your favorite sugar lotus seeds. Eat the sugar lotus seeds, so you can't cry anymore. Chapter 123. I'm covering my face. How do you know that I'm your little Feng She held the bag of sugar lotus seeds in her hand and asked the question in her heart. After all, even Murong Yixian and Su Ruo Shui were unable to recognize her at first glance. How did he recognize her? Who knew that her words would receive the old man's disdainful gaze? Grandfather watched you grow up. Could it be that grandfather can't recognize you just because you covered your face? Moreover, grandfather has only been in closed-door cultivation for a few months. How could he not recognize you? Hearing his words, Feng Jiu finally recalled that before the incident, the old man had been in closed-door cultivation. Thinking about it, he must have come out looking for wine to drink as soon as he came out. He probably hadn't seen the fake Feng Chinga in the Feng manor yet. Then do you remember which family you belong to? Old Master Feng looked at her and shook his head, sighing, Little Feng grandfather has only been in closed-door cultivation for a few months. Why does it feel like you've become stupid? You are my granddaughter. Which family do you belong to? Of course, I belong to that family. Is there even a need to ask? Feng Jiu's mouth twitched. Although there was nothing wrong with what he said, why did it sound a bit strange to her? Moreover, it was clear that he did not remember who she was. The two walked the streets for a long time. When they approached the Feng Manor's gates, she stopped walking. You should go back. Next time you go out, don't leave the Feng guards behind. Otherwise, you'll forget the way back. Old Master Feng heard this and felt it was strange. Looking at the Feng Manor's gates in front of him, he then looked at her who was about to turn and leave. Puzzled, he asked, Little Feng you're not going home with grandfather? Where are you going? As he said this, he followed closely behind her and lectured her. Say, why didn't you bring someone with you when you went out alone? What if you ran into danger and were taken away? You're the only treasure in our family. If you're kidnapped, where are we going to find you? You're not going back. She looked at him strangely. Her heart was a bit worried. This was great. What should she do with him? Old Master Feng narrowed his eyes with a smile and fawningly said, Don't you still want to go stroll around? Grandfather will accompany you and can protect you. Also, grandfather has just come out of closed-door cultivation. I don't want to return home so quickly. He patted the wine gourd at his waist and said, I still haven't finished drinking this wine. Looking at the Feng Manor's main gate in front of her, she then looked at the old man at her side. She silently sighed before taking him away. Inside the Feng Manor, when Feng Xiao, who was talking to Murong Yishen, heard the housekeeper's report, he immediately stood up and shouted in a deep voice, What? The butler lowered his head slightly, not daring to look him in the eye. Yes, this old servant has sent the guards out to look for him, but there is no news yet. Feng Xiao said with a bit of worry. He looked at Murong Yishen. Grandfather has disappeared. I need to go look for him. Qing Ji has been hiding in her room since she came back. I will have to trouble you to go look for her for me. Uncle Xiao, do you want me to send someone to help look? Murong Yishen stood up and asked. No need. The manor has plenty of people. Also, I estimate that he should be in a wine shop in the city. We can just go look. Chapter 124. Seeing him leave with large strides, Murong Yishen paused for a moment before he walked to the backyard and arrived at Feng Qingge's courtyard. When the two servant girls in the courtyard saw him, they hurriedly bowed and greeted him. Third Wangye. You may leave. He stood in the middle of the courtyard and gestured for the two servant girls to leave. The two of them looked at each other and agreed. Then, they walked out. Feng Qingge heard Murong Yishen's voice from inside the room, and the more she thought about it, the more aggrieved she felt. Qingge, I have something to say to you. He stood outside the door and didn't enter. The door creaked open and an angry Feng Qingge stood by the door. What do you want to say? Are you trying to say that you didn't intentionally watch me get beaten? Or are you trying to say that your heart was moved when you saw that beautiful veiled girl? Murong Yishen looked at her with a complicated expression. Hearing her words, he was silent for a moment before he said, I'm sorry. Hearing his apology, her heart skipped a beat and she panicked. Big brother Murong, these past few months, I've always felt that you were very far away from me. Do you really not like me anymore? Qingge, you're very good, really very good. He lowered his eyes and thought of the veiled girl. We can be said to be childhood sweethearts. Both of us are in love with each other, and I always thought that we would be together forever. Even a few months ago, I was prepared to ask Royal Father for an edict to let us get married. Big brother Murong, you. Let me finish. He looked at her and said, but in the past few months, just as you have felt, I have also felt that the distance between the two of us has been growing. I don't know when that feeling of being together in the past disappeared. I know this is very cruel to you, but I don't want to lie to you. Looking at her, who was silently crying, he looked away. Just now, I was going to tell your father to cancel the engagement between us, but after your grandfather came out of seclusion, I don't know where he went. He brought people to look for him. I'll tell him about this in a few days. She rushed forward and hugged him tightly, crying in panic, No, I don't want to. Brother Murong, I don't want to break off the engagement. I like you. I've liked you for a very long time, do you know that? He let her hug him, and his eyes were filled with guilt. Qingge, don't be like this. Isn't it good if I treat you like a younger sister in the future? No. I don't want to be your sister, I don't want to. Big brother Murong, tell me, did I not do well enough? Did I do something wrong? Tell me, I'll change, I'll definitely change. She raised her head and looked at him sadly with tears streaming down her face. She didn't want to believe what she had heard. She truly liked him, truly loved him. For his sake, she had imitated Feng Qingge's every move, imitated her speech, imitated her demeanor. For his sake, she was even willing to live as Feng Qingge for the rest of her life and face him with her face. But now, he actually said that he wanted to break off the engagement. He pulled her hands away from his waist and looked at her guiltily. Qingge, I didn't do this in a moment of anger. This thought has been in my heart for some time and I only said it today. I hope you can understand that feelings can't be forced. I'm very sorry for hurting you. As soon as his voice fell, he no longer looked at her and turned around to leave in large strides. Chapter 125. After a long time, she wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes and her eyes gradually regained their luster. However, there was also hatred and ruthlessness in her eyes. Murong Ishwan, I've done so much for you. How can you turn your back on me just like that? I won't let you get what you want. You're destined to be mine. Unlike the Feng family, on the other side, in Fengzhou's courtyard, the old master Feng who was brought back was looking at the courtyard curiously like a child taking a stroll. He asked doubtfully, Little Feng whose courtyard is this? And you, why are you wearing a veil all the time? Although he was a little forgetful, he wasn't stupid. Along the way, he could faintly see that something was wrong. His granddaughter, especially in this courtyard, was wearing a veil all the time. Therefore, a light flashed through his eyes and a smile appeared on his face. Suddenly, in a flash, he raised his hand and pulled off her veil. This courtyard is. Fengzhou was stunned. Before she finished speaking, the veil on her face was pulled off, revealing her scarred and disfigured face. Hiss. What's going on? Old Master Feng sucked in a breath of cold air and asked furiously. He originally wanted to play a joke on his granddaughter by pulling off her veil to see why she was always wearing it. He didn't expect that under the veil was such a disfigured face. This was his granddaughter, his precious granddaughter. Who was it? Who dared to hurt her like this? Fengzhou caressed her face. She didn't expect him to suddenly pull off her veil. This was completely out of her expectations. She didn't want him to see her disfigured face. Who was it? Tell Grandpa, who hurt your face like this? The old man's heart ached, and his eyes reddened. Even his voice was choked with sobs. He looked at the face that was covered with scars. He couldn't imagine how she had endured that kind of pain. Who was it? Who was so cruel to ruin a girl's face like this? Fengzhou's heart trembled. She looked at the old man, whose eyes were red and his voice choked with sobs. She looked away and asked, Do you still think I'm your granddaughter? Do you still recognize me as your granddaughter? Hearing this, old Master Feng finally couldn't hold back his tears. He stepped forward and hugged Fengzhou, patting her head with one hand and comforting her with a choked voice. Little Feng, don't be afraid, don't be afraid. Grandpa will recognize you. No matter what you become, Grandpa will still recognize you. Grandpa. In the end, Fengzhou couldn't help but call out. This call of grandfather came from the bottom of her heart. It contained Fengzhou's feelings as well as Feng Qingge's. Perhaps, from the moment he recognized her at first glance, she already knew that he was Fengzhou's grandfather. Old Master Feng took a step back, grabbed her shoulders with both hands, and said, Feng lass, tell Grandpa, did something happen while Grandpa was in seclusion? Who ruined your face? Fengzhou was silent for a long time before she said, There's a Feng Qingge in the Feng family. What? Old Master Feng was stunned. You're saying that there's a fake in the family? That's impossible, right? Your father's son isn't stupid. How could he not recognize his own daughter? Chapter 126. She did not say too much, only saying, Grandfather, you can go home and take a look. However, I hope that you will not mention the matter of me being here to anyone. Old Master Feng heard this and was startled. You don't plan on going back with Grandfather? Are you worried that your father won't believe you? Or does he not believe Grandfather? She shook her head. If you still believe that I am your granddaughter after seeing the Feng family's Feng Qingge, then I will go back with you. Seeing this, old Master Feng stroked his beard and was silent for a while. Since it's like this, then Grandfather will go back and take a look at the situation. Don't worry, Grandfather will come back. At this moment, his face was filled with a solemn expression and his body exuded the aura of a clan leader. He thought to himself, if there really is a fake Feng Qingge in the family, then that person must be the one who had ruined his granddaughter's face. If that was the case, then he definitely would not let that person off easily. A sharp look flashed across his wise eyes, but when he looked at Fengzhou, he revealed a kind smile. Feng girl, don't be afraid. Wait here. Grandfather will go home and take a look. Don't worry, Grandfather will come back to pick you up very quickly. Hearing this, her heart warmed. She revealed a bright smile and nodded, Yuan. Although she originally did not want to go back so quickly, since he already knew about the situation, then she would just wait and see. After Old Master Feng finished speaking, he left the courtyard and headed towards the Feng family. On the way back to the Feng manor, he met Feng Xiao, who was looking for him with a group of people. Seeing him, Feng Xiao hurriedly came forward with a worried expression. "Father, where did you go? Why didn't you bring anyone with you? I already searched all the nearby wine shops, but I didn't see you." Old Master Feng crossed his arms and glanced at him. He heavily snorted and his face was dark. It was clear that he was suppressing his anger and said, "Keep your skin tight. I'll take care of you later." Feng Xiao's face was filled with shock. He did not know how he had angered his father. Just as he was about to ask, he saw that he was already walking towards the Feng manor. He quickly ordered, "Go, call everyone back. Just say that the old master has been found." "Yes." The guard behind him responded and quickly turned to leave. Feng Xiao strode after him and asked, "Dad, what's wrong with you? Who made you angry?" Old Master Feng didn't answer him. He just strode forward with a gloomy face. His eyes were gloomy, and his aura was oppressive. Even Feng Xiao, who was walking beside him, couldn't help feeling nervous. He didn't know what had happened. Entering the Feng manor, the Feng master sat in the main seat and slammed his hand on the table. His old voice was filled with anger as he shouted, "Go call him over." Feng Xiao, who had followed him in, hurried forward and asked in confusion, "Father, who did you call?" "Of course it's the old madam's precious granddaughter." He emphasized those words, and his gaze was as sharp as a knife, as if he was trying his best to restrain his anger. "Song." Feng Xiao was stunned. He looked at the angry old man and asked carefully, "Father, why are you looking for Chinga? Did she make you angry? That shouldn't be the case. You ran out as soon as you came out of seclusion. She hasn't seen you for many months. She couldn't have made you angry." Bang. Chapter 127. Feng Xiao's legs trembled and his entire body trembled from his furious father's yelling. Only the heavens knew that he hadn't seen his father this angry in many years. He didn't dare to ask again and only responded, "Okay, okay, okay. Don't be angry. I'll immediately send someone to call her." As he spoke, he hurriedly went out to have the steward call his daughter over from the rear courtyard. At the same time, in Feng Chinga's courtyard, a middle-aged man quietly appeared outside her room and called out to the person inside, "Master." Feng Chinga was a little surprised when she heard the voice outside and immediately said, "Come in." The middle-aged man flashed into the room and saw her sitting at the table. He stepped forward and said in a low voice, "Grandfather Feng has been found." But as soon as he returned, he angrily called for Master to see him. "The steward is currently on his way here." This subordinate saw that the situation was a little unusual and specially came to report. Hearing this, her gaze sank and she pondered for a moment before saying, "I understand. You go out first and don't let anyone discover you." "Yes." The middle-aged man responded and left in a flash. She sat quietly in her room and pondered. Not long after, she heard the steward's voice from outside. "Young miss, Master invites you to the main hall." She stood up, opened the door, and walked out. Seeing the steward in the courtyard, she greeted him and asked, "Uncle Cheng, have you found grandfather?" "Grandfather has been found. Young miss doesn't need to worry." The steward smiled and said, "Grandfather and Master are waiting for young miss in the front hall. Young miss should quickly go over." "Okay." She nodded and walked towards the front courtyard. In the front hall, Feng Xiao took the tea brought in by a maid and placed it beside his father's hand. "Father, please drink some tea first." Old Master Feng didn't speak and only looked at the door as if he was waiting for Feng Chinga to arrive. What the hell is going on? Feng Xiao was puzzled and uneasy in his heart, but he didn't ask. Father didn't seem to want to say. Moreover, this matter seemed to be related to Chinga. Just as he was feeling apprehensive, the atmosphere in the hall became increasingly gloomy and oppressive. Finally, he heard the steward's voice from outside. Old Master, young miss is here." Hearing this, Feng Xiao was about to get up and walk out to remind her, but who knew that as soon as his butt left the chair, he heard a loud shout accompanied by the sound of a table being slammed. "Sit down." He was so frightened that his legs trembled. His heart skipped a beat, and he fell back into his seat. He sat down properly and looked at his angry father with some apprehension, but he didn't expect to meet his father's furious and dignified gaze. She could only force out a smile and embarrassedly said, "Father, don't be so angry. Don't scare Chinga." His father's authority was deeply engraved in his bones. As long as his father shouted or gave him a look, he would be able to turn this dignified and mighty general into a coward. Oh, no, he would immediately cower. His mighty and domineering aura was only for outsiders. In front of his family members, he could not display any mighty aura at all. Old Master Feng didn't say anything. Instead, his sharp and wise eyes landed on the figure that walked in from outside. When he saw that familiar face, his eyes narrowed slightly. He really did have two granddaughters. One's face was ruined, while the other's face was as good as new. His old eyes narrowed as he carefully sized them up from head to toe. Chapter 128. Grandfather, Father. She called out, trying her best to ease the suffocating atmosphere in the hall. She walked over to old Master Feng's side and hugged his arm with both hands, revealing a bright smile. "Grandfather, Feng girl missed you so much. You've been in seclusion for several months and I haven't seen you for several months." There was no laughter as she expected. On the contrary, old Master Feng narrowed his eyes and stared at her. His sharp eyes seemed to see through her, causing her heart to skip a beat. "Grandfather, what's wrong?" She couldn't help but loosen her grip on his arm and took a step back, looking at him with an uneasy expression. Feng Xiao saw this and hurriedly stepped forward. "Father, Chinga is calling for you. I remember that you have a phoenix birthmark on your forearm. Take off your outer garment and show it to me." Old Master Feng's sharp eyes stared at her and his voice was dignified, not missing the slightest trace of expression on her face. Hearing this, not only did Feng Chinga's eyes widen in astonishment, even Feng Xiao furrowed his brows. "Father, what do you mean by this? Why do you suddenly want to see Chinga's birthmark? What are you suspecting? Grandfather, are you suspecting that I'm not your granddaughter?" Her eyes were filled with tears of grievance and her face was filled with sadness. Feng Xiao couldn't help but feel distressed when he saw this and hurriedly comforted. "Chinga, your grandfather didn't mean that. Don't think too much." However, old Master Feng gave a heavy snort and swept a glance at Feng Xiao before looking at Feng Chinga. He frowned and said in an unyielding tone, "Show me the phoenix birthmark." "Father, shut up!" Old Master Feng sternly shouted and glared at Feng Xiao. Immediately, Feng Xiao didn't dare to say a word. Feng Chinga gently bit her lips as tears fell from her eyes. "Grandfather, don't be angry. If grandfather wants to see the phoenix birthmark, I'll show it to grandfather." As she spoke, she half unbuckled her belt and pulled down her coat, revealing the red phoenix birthmark on her snow-white arm. "Father, look. Isn't Chinga's Feng birthmark there?" He really couldn't understand the old man. Why did he want to see Chinga's birthmark after going out for a while? Could it be that he suspected that his daughter had been swapped? One had to know that he had seen her walk around every day. Her actions, her expression, and her appearance, how could they be fake? Seeing the phoenix birthmark, old Master Feng frowned and said, "Come here." "Father." Old Master Feng didn't care about him. Instead, he stared at Feng Chinga. "Come here." This time, his voice was a bit stronger and carried an undeniable majesty. Feng Chinga gently bit her lips and glanced at him. Then, she slowly walked forward and stopped in front of him. She slightly narrowed her eyes. Old Master Feng glanced at her. He dipped his finger in some tea and rubbed it on the red phoenix birthmark. When he looked again, the red phoenix birthmark was still there. It hadn't faded or been wiped away by him. He couldn't help but frown deeper. "Grandfather, can I pull up my coat?" she asked in a slightly choked voice as she looked at old Master Feng with a hurt expression. Without waiting for old Master Feng to speak, Feng Xiao hurriedly said, "Chinga, quickly pull up your coat. Go back to your room first. I'll talk to your grandfather." "Okay." Tears fell from her eyes as she pulled up her coat and ran out. Chapter 129. Old Master Feng looked at him with a heavy gaze and said, "That's right, I suspect that she isn't my Feng lass." "How is that possible? Father, what did you encounter outside? Did someone tell you something? Why would you think that?" Feng Xiao couldn't accept his father suspecting his own daughter. What was going on? Looking at Feng Xiao, Old Master Feng shook his head. Even his own father couldn't tell if his daughter was real or fake, so it was no wonder that his Feng lass didn't dare to come back. He stood up and took a deep breath with his hands behind his back, saying, "Sometimes, a person's eyes can be blinded. There are many things that you need to use your heart to feel and use your heart to see. I, your father, have lived for so long and have eaten more salt than you have rice." He glanced at him and continued, "Even if she has Feng lass's face and has the same phoenix birthmark as Feng lass, she definitely isn't Feng lass. You have to know, feelings can't lie." Seeing his father's aura change after he finished speaking and he walked out with large strides, Feng Xiao was shocked and hurriedly stopped him, asking, "Father, what do you want to do?" Old Master Feng glanced at him and said, "She isn't my Feng lass. I want to capture her and take off her mask." Feng Xiao was stunned when he heard this, and even his voice couldn't help but become louder. "Father, you're crazy. She is Chinga, your granddaughter, your Feng lass." He felt that his father had gone mad. Otherwise, it was impossible for him to say such words. "Humph. I think you're the one who's crazy. You can't even tell your own daughter apart and you still have the nerve to say that you're Feng lass's father. Do you know what kind of suffering Feng lass has suffered? Do you know?" Thinking of his precious granddaughter's disfigured face, his throat suddenly choked up and he glared at him with moist eyes. "Have you ever thought that if the Feng Chinga in this manner is fake, then where is the real Feng lass? Is she suffering? Could she have suffered a mishap? You didn't. You didn't even dare to think about that possibility. Even when I told you, you didn't believe me. Tell me, with a father like you, how could my Feng lass dare to come home? Father, what you said is impossible. My daughter is clear. She has always been by my side and there's nothing wrong with her. Tell me, how could the things you said happen? Father, are you too tired? Or are you drunk? Why don't I help you return to the courtyard to rest?" He stepped forward to help him up, but unexpectedly, with a flick of his sleeve, a strong force came over and pushed him back several meters. "Bastard. Just you wait. Wait. Once I've taken care of Feng lass, I'll take care of you." Old Master Feng cursed angrily as he leaped towards Feng Chinga's courtyard. "Father." Feng Xiao was shocked. He cried out in surprise and hurriedly followed. However, his strength was not as strong as Grandfather Feng's, and his speed was far inferior to his. In the blink of an eye, Grandfather Feng's figure disappeared. Seeing this, he shouted, "Father, don't act recklessly." Because the father and son's movements were very loud, almost everyone in the manor was alarmed. They all poked their heads out and whispered to each other, "What's going on? I seem to have heard the old master say that young miss is a fake. How is that possible? It was the old master who was drunk. How could young miss be a fake?" "Ah!" A scream rang out, startling the servants who were in the middle of their discussion. Chapter 130. When Feng Xiao arrived at his daughter's courtyard, he was so frightened by the scene that his heart nearly jumped out of his chest. He saw the old master taking out a long sword from somewhere and wielding it with both hands, using his profound energy aura to wildly slash around the courtyard. His daughter, on the other hand, was so frightened that she hid to the side and cried, "Father, what are you doing?" He cried out in alarm and hurriedly rushed forward to snatch the sword from his father's hand so that he wouldn't hurt anyone. But who knew that the old master would also turn around and forcefully push him away? Scram! This old man wants to kill her. Kill her! Feng Xiao's face was completely drained of blood. He once again pounced forward and tightly hugged his father from behind. "Father, wake up. That's Chinga. She's your granddaughter. She's not. She's not. She harmed my Feng lass. She harmed my Feng lass. Ah. Let go. I want to kill her." Old Master Feng's eyes were bloodshot as he shouted with a crazed expression. He struggled to pounce forward. No one saw that Feng Chinga, who was hiding at the side and crying with a face full of panic, looked at old Master Feng with a trace of viciousness and excitement. That trace of viciousness and excitement flashed by so quickly that no one noticed it. She cried in panic and shouted, "Father, father, save me. Grandfather wants to kill me." Feng Xiao listened to his beloved daughter's panicked and helpless cries and then looked at his father's nearly crazed expression. Seeing that he couldn't stop it, he finally had no choice but to give in and fiercely chopped down with his hand, knocking him unconscious. Clang! Old Master Feng's body went limp and the sword in his hand fell to the ground. The entire courtyard finally calmed down because he had fainted. "Steward, go invite Elder Lin over and check on father." Feng Xiao's expression was grave as he supported the old master and ordered the steward outside the courtyard. "Yes, yes." The steward hurriedly responded and chased away the people who were watching the show. Then, he quickly went to invite a doctor from the manor. Only then did Feng Qingge walk over with a face full of fear. "Father, what happened to grandfather? Are you hurt?" He looked at her and saw that her face was full of tears. He comforted her. "Don't be afraid. Father is here. No one can hurt you. You go back to your room first. Father will send your grandfather back to the courtyard." With that, he helped the unconscious old man out. "Father, I'll go and take a look." She followed with small steps and said, "I'm worried about grandfather." "All right." Feng Xiao nodded and let her follow. Not long after the old man was placed on the bed, an old man walked in under the guidance of the butler. "Master." The old man bowed to Feng Xiao. "Elder Lin, quickly come over and take a look at my father. See if there's anything wrong with him." Feng Xiao hurriedly said, gesturing for him to come over. "Yes." Elder Lin replied and glanced at Feng Qingge, who was beside the bed without batting an eyelid. Only then did he walk up to the bedside and check on Elder Feng. After a while, he retracted his hand and asked, "Master, I wonder if there's anything wrong with Elder Feng after he returned." Feng Xiao's eyes were full of worry. He sighed and said, "After father came out of seclusion, he ran out. I thought he went to the wine shop again, but I didn't expect to run into him on the street. At that time, I saw that his complexion was not good. After he came back, he threw a tantrum and even said that Qingge wasn't his granddaughter. After that, he even went to Qingge's courtyard. When I rushed over, I saw him slashing around with a sword and was so scared that my heart almost jumped out." Chapter 131. Elder Lin nodded and said, "Then that's right. Old Master Lin must have encountered some problems in his cultivation, causing his mind to be a little deranged." "What?" Feng Xiao cried out in alarm. "You're saying that he encountered some problems in his cultivation that caused his mind to be a little deranged? How is that possible? If there's a problem in his cultivation, then it's probably a qi deviation. But I've examined him and all the profound energy in his body is normal. It's impossible for something like that to happen. Did you make a mistake in your diagnosis?" Hearing this, the old man frowned. "If old master doesn't believe me, you can invite someone else to treat the old master. But I only want to say that it's the same no matter who you invite. Moreover, it's best to lock the old master up. Otherwise, when he wakes up, we don't know if he'll be like before. The current him is very dangerous. Even he doesn't know what he's done. You're saying that when grandfather wakes up, it's very likely that he'll take out his sword and try to kill me?" Feng Qingge asked with a trembling voice and a pale face. Elder Lin nodded. "Amen, it's very likely." Hearing this, Feng Xiao's expression also became serious. He looked at his daughter who was trying her best to suppress her panic, then looked at his unconscious father on the bed and couldn't help but sigh. "Let's invite a few more doctors to examine him first. Qingge, you go back to the courtyard first. Father will be fine here." Amen. She lowered her eyes and nodded. In her heart, she knew that he wouldn't lock up the old master so easily. After all, he and the old master had a very good father-son relationship. Naturally, he wouldn't conclude that the old master was deranged just because of a doctor's words, much less lock up the old master so easily. However, it didn't matter who he invited. She would make him believe that the old master had gone crazy. On the other side, Feng Jiu sat in the courtyard with one hand supporting her cheek. No one knew what she was thinking. She didn't even notice that Lung Shuang had returned. Master, MN. She returned to her senses and saw her standing beside her. She asked, "You're back? Did you choose anyone?" Yes, young master brought 5 people back and was about to invite master to the outer courtyard. Millimeter, she tied the veil around her face and slowly walked to the outer courtyard. When Guan Shilin saw her, he quickly went up to her and said, "Xiao Ju, you're here. Look, I bought 5 people, and one of them is a cook." Then, he said to the people, "Raise your heads and let my sister see." Yes. Only then did they raise their heads with apprehension. When they saw the girl standing in front of them, they were stunned. However, they did not dare to look at her too presumptuously. Instead, they hurriedly lowered their eyes after a glance. Feng Jiu's gaze swept across the group. After sizing them up, he asked, "What are your names?" "Miss, please bestow names to us servants." The older female cook said. Because they were selling their bodies, they would be part of this family in the future. Naturally, they could not use their previous names. Then let's use Qing as the generation name. You can each choose one of the 4 characters, Ping An and Rui. As for the kitchen maid, let's call her Qing Niang. "Thank you, miss, for bestowing names." The group of people bowed. She nodded and said to Guan Shilin, "Brother, let Lung Shuang arrange their accommodations and tell him the rules. I'm a little tired after being out for the whole day, so I'll go back to my room to rest." "Okay, then you can go." He nodded and watched her leave. Then, he told Lung Shuang to help them settle down and followed after her. Chapter 132. After 2 or 3 days, old Master Feng did not come again. Originally, Feng Zhou thought that perhaps he thought Feng Qingji was fake after seeing her, but the more she thought about it, the more she felt that something was off. Based on old Master Feng's attitude and tone at that time, even if he thought she was fake, he would definitely come to find her. But after waiting for 2 or 3 days, he still did not come. This was strange. Thus, she left the room and ordered Lung Shuang, who was sitting cross-legged in the courtyard, "Lung Shuang, go find out if anything has happened in the Feng Manor these past 2 days." Yes. Although Lung Shuang was puzzled, he did not ask any questions and left. She went to the courtyard and sat down, waiting for Lung Shuang to come back with the results. If this matter was not taken care of properly, she would not be able to calm down and cultivate. Originally, she did not plan on returning to the Feng Manor so quickly, but the current situation. "Xiao Ju, Qingyang made some sweet soup. I brought a bowl over for you. Try it, the taste is not bad." Guan Shilin smiled as he walked in with a bowl of sweet soup in his hands. "Thank you, brother." She smiled and stood up to receive it. Guan Shilin sat down at the stone table and said, "Xiao Ju, I came here to tell you something." "Chem? What is it?" she asked as she drank the sweet soup. He hesitated for a moment, then said, "I want to go to the black market to fight." Hearing this, she frowned. "You want to use that to make money? You won't earn much at all. Also, if you meet an opponent stronger than you won't even have the chance to admit defeat. I think that, aside from making money, that kind of place can also increase my battle strength. Right now, what I lack the most is actual combat experience. So, I want to accumulate experience first, then participate in the glorious Sun Country's triennial selection and become one of the top 10. Only then will I have the opportunity to enter the Academy of Stars and Clouds." Academy of Stars and Clouds? She searched in her mind, and said, "Is it the Cultivation Study Palace that is rated as a 7-star academy? I remember that the selection is very strict. Moreover, it's a selection every 3 years. Even for a small 9th-tier country like the Dazzling Country, it seems that after so many years, no one has been able to enter the Academy of Stars and Cloud. Yes, the College of Stars and Clouds is very strict when it comes to recruiting students. Furthermore, it is located in the Green Teng Kingdom, a level 6 middle kingdom. Only those who are in the top 10 of the glorious Sun Kingdom will have the chance to try their luck there. Although I know it will be difficult, I still want to try. Furthermore, only by leaving the glorious Sun Kingdom will I be able to find my father in the future." Hearing this, she nodded in understanding. What he said was indeed correct. If one wanted to go from a small 9th-tier country to a higher-tier country, one would only be allowed to enter if their strength was recognized. Otherwise, even if one was a prince of a country, they could only be rejected outside the city gates. Take Murong Yi Xian as an example. He was a prince of the glorious Sun country and was also a proud son of the heavens. Originally, he had the opportunity to enter the College of Stars and Clouds to cultivate. However, an accident happened 3 years ago and caused him to miss the opportunity. He brushed past the College of Stars and Clouds. If he wanted to enter the College of Stars and Clouds again, he could only wait for the triennial selection. Since you have already set your goal, then go and do it. However, you must remember that you must be careful when you fight with others. If you meet an opponent that is too strong, you must admit defeat immediately. You must know that losing a competition is not shameful. If you lose your life, then it will be too late for regrets. Yes, I know. Chapter 133. Master. Lung Shuang called out, then nodded to Guan Shalin. Young master. How is it? Feng Jiu looked at her and asked. Something has indeed happened in the Feng family these past 2 days. Elder Feng has been locked up. Locked up? Her brow slightly furrowed and her voice unconsciously became louder. Yes, because it's a matter within the Feng manor, very few people outside know about it. They only know that in the past 2 days, General Feng has invited quite a few famous doctors into the manor. They all diagnosed Elder Feng as having a demonic illness and said that he is in danger of attacking people, so he has been locked up. After hearing this, Feng Jiu's face sank and he did not speak for a while. This made Guan Shalin feel very strange. He looked at Lung Shuang and then looked at Feng Jiu. In the end, he could not help but ask, Xiao Ju, why are you asking about the Feng family? Hearing this, she looked at him and saw that he had a curious expression. Even Lung Shuang looked at her. After pausing for a moment, she said, perhaps I should tell you about this matter. The two's hearts jumped as their gazes fell on her body. They always knew that she had a secret, but she did not say it, so they did not ask. I also have another identity, and that is Feng Xiao's daughter, Feng Qingge. What? Hearing her say this, it was like a sudden clap of thunder that set off waves in their hearts. You are Feng Qingge? Then what about the Feng Qingge we met that day? Who is she? Guan Shalin's eyes widened in astonishment, and his face was filled with shock. But when he thought about it, Xiao Ju would not lie to him. Thinking back to that day, he felt that Feng Qingge was similar to Xiao Ju, and hearing her say it now, he felt that it was too inconceivable. Even Lung Shuang, who had always been cold, had an expression of shock. If Master was Feng Qingge, then it would explain why she was so concerned about the Feng family's matters. However, if Master was the Feng manor's young miss, Feng Qingge, then was the fake Feng Qingge the one who ruined Master's appearance? Her name is Su Ruoyun. I picked her up from the roadside when she was just a few years old and she has always been by my side. However, it's hard to fathom a person's heart. She replaced my identity, scratched my face, and had someone sell me to a brothel. She was even afraid that I wouldn't die, so she fed me poison. Her voice was calm as if she was talking about someone else. However, Guan Shalin and Lung Shuang clenched their fists tightly when they heard what she said. Their hearts ached for Su Ruoyun, and at the same time, they wished they could kill that vicious woman with their own hands. Feng Jiu drank a mouthful of the sweet soup that had already cooled down. She revealed a bright smile and said, however, no matter how much she calculated, she would never have guessed that I would still be alive, much less that I have already returned. Xiao Ju, you didn't return to the Feng family. Was it because you were afraid that your face would be ruined and your father and grandfather wouldn't be able to recognize you? Guan Shalin looked at her with heartache. His heart twisted into a ball. When they first met in Jiufu Forest, she had fought against a pack of wolves by herself. He still remembered that ruthlessness and killing intent. He had never been able to figure out what kind of family could raise a child like her, but at this moment, he understood everything. It wasn't that she wanted to grow, but that she was forced to grow. If she wasn't ruthless, then she wouldn't have been able to survive. My face is ruined, But when I met my grandfather on the streets a few days ago, he immediately recognized me. Thinking of that drunken old Master Feng, she couldn't help but reveal a smile. Chapter 134. Could it be that the rumor that the Feng Master has gone mad this time was caused by Su Ruoyun? Guan Shilin's eyes widened. He felt that woman was too scary. Since she stole Xiao Ju's identity, she did not treat her family as family and even schemed to harm them. That kind of woman should be hacked to pieces. She pondered for a bit and nodded. Grandfather couldn't have suddenly become like that after returning home. I think it must be her doing. I'll go take a look tonight. You want to sneak into the Feng Manor? But a place like the Feng Manor must be heavily guarded. I'm afraid it won't be easy to get in, he said with some worry, then continued. Besides, if you're caught, what if they think you're an assassin and kill you? You don't need to worry about that. With my current strength, sneaking into the Feng Manor is no problem. Her voice was filled with confidence. Looking at him, she said, I'll take care of this myself. You don't need to worry. We'll talk about it after I visit the Feng Manor tonight. Yuan, then you must be careful. Guan Shilin worriedly said. Master, do you want me to go with you? Or provide support outside? Leng Shuang asked. No need. She stood up and said to the two, you two wait at home. I'm going back to my room to cultivate. You don't need to call me for dinner. After saying this, she turned around to go back to her room. Then she stopped and looked at Leng Shuang. My brother is going to the black market arena. Go tell them to take care of him later. Yes. Leng Shuang replied. After watching her enter her room, he looked at Guan Shilin. Young master, you're going to the arena? That's right. I want to go there and test my skills. His voice was filled with eagerness. His eyes lit up as he said, also, I want to enter the Academy of Stars and Clouds. That's why I want to enter the top 10 in the glorious Sun Country in the competition held every 3 years. The Academy of Stars and Clouds accepts students every 3 years. Right now, you have 1 year to prepare. As she said this, she looked at him and said, however, it's very strict. Elites from all over the country are gathered in one place. Are you sure you can enter the Academy of Stars and Clouds in 1 year? I will definitely enter. His voice was filled with determination. His eyebrows were filled with confidence. After returning to her room, Fengjiu entered the space. She Wen Night. The Feng. They only saw Feng Xiao, who was sitting on the main seat. After hearing Murong Yishen's intentions, his face turned ashen. He angrily slammed his palm on the table and roared loudly, say that again. Murong Yishen's handsome face was filled with guilt and apology. He stood up and said seriously, Uncle Xiao, I know it's hard for you to accept. But this is something I've decided after careful consideration. I've also told Qing Ji about this. Chapter 135. Lessen the harm to her. Don't you know that you're already harming her by bringing up breaking off the engagement? Feng Xiao glared at him angrily and stood up to criticize. You two can be considered childhood sweethearts and loved each other since you were young. I originally thought that you two would get married this year, but now you actually want to break off the engagement. Tell me, are you worthy of Qing Ji? Fengjiu, who was on the roof, looked at the furious Feng Xiao. This was her father, a father who loved his daughter as much as his own life. However, because of this excessive pampering, he never suspected that his daughter had changed. In his opinion, no matter what his daughter did or did, it was the best. Towards him, she really couldn't describe how she felt. Was she disappointed? She couldn't be. After all, he didn't know that she had been swapped, right? No matter how she looked at it, he was a good father, a father who loved his daughter dearly. She took a deep look at him before she shifted her gaze away, and her gaze landed on Murong Yishen. She didn't think that he would actually come to break off the engagement. However, this had nothing to do with her right now. She should first find out where her grandfather was locked up. Carefully moving the tile back to its original position, she took a deep breath and quietly left, heading towards the backyard. Relying on the memories in her mind, she was very familiar with the Feng Manor and easily arrived at her grandfather's courtyard. In her opinion, Even if the old man was locked up because of his madness, he could only be locked up in his courtyard. After all, with her father's filial piety to her grandfather, it was impossible for him to mistreat him. "Let me out. Let me out. This old man will kill you. You're a vicious woman. Vicious woman." Before she even got close, she heard the old man's roar from inside the room. Not long after, Su Ruoyun, dressed in a blue dress, walked out of the room. As she closed the door, she pretended to say to the two Phoenix guards, "Grandfather's health isn't good. You must look after him carefully. Young miss, don't worry. This subordinate will take good care of the old master." The two Phoenix guards said calmly, "Millimeter, I'll come back tomorrow." She nodded, then left with light steps. Watching her leave, the two Phoenix guards saw that there was no one around and couldn't help but say, "Why do you think the old master always scolds young miss? How dare you say she's a fake? Didn't you say that many famous doctors were invited, but the final diagnosis was the same? Everyone says that the old master has gone mad. Tell me, if that's not the case, why would he want to kill young miss for no reason?" The Phoenix guard scratched his head and said in confusion, "But this is very strange. The old master was clearly fine before, how did he suddenly become like this? I keep feeling that something is strange, but I can't tell what it is." "Then don't worry so much. Just protect the old master and don't let anything happen to him. Millimeter." As soon as the Phoenix guard finished speaking, the two of them let out a muffled groan and fainted on the ground. Feng Jiu, dressed in black, jumped into the courtyard. After looking around, he quickly pushed open the door and walked in. However, when she saw the old master inside, her eyes reddened. She quickly ran over and called out in a choked voice, "Grandfather." Chapter 136. "I'll kill you. I'll kill you. Ah, let me out. Let me out." The Feng master roared crazily as if he had completely lost his mind. The profound energy in his entire body surged, causing people to not dare to get too close to him. "Grandfather, it's me, I'm the Feng girl." Seeing the old man suffer like this because of her, tears flowed down uncontrollably. Her heart clenched tightly in pain. At this moment, she really wanted to hang Su Ruoyun up and cut off his flesh to let him bleed, to vent the hatred in her heart. "I'll kill you. Ah." Seeing that he had completely lost his mind, she could only endure the pain in her heart. Taking out a silver needle, she injected profound energy into it and shot it at him. "Kill." The Feng master's voice weakened and he fainted. The profound energy in his body also dissipated. She quickly walked forward and came to the bedside to check his pulse. With this check, her heart sank. Taking out a metal wire from her space, she undid the locks on his hands and feet. Then, after hitting his unconscious acupuncture point, she sent him into her space. Only then did she quickly leave. Unexpectedly, as soon as she left the room, she met the housekeeper who was walking into the courtyard. "Who's there?" the housekeeper shouted loudly. Seeing the two Feng guards lying on the ground and the black-clothed man entering the Feng master's room, he was shocked and immediately shouted, Someone come quickly. There's an assassin." At the same time that he spoke, he took a step forward and pounced forward, wanting to capture the black-clothed man. "Damn it!" Feng Jiu cursed in her heart. She didn't think that someone would come at this time. Seeing the housekeeper pounce over, she immediately leaped up and stepped on the housekeeper's shoulder to fly up to the roof. Just as she was about to quickly leave the Feng manor, she didn't think that the housekeeper's shout would alert everyone in the manor, especially Feng Xiao and Murong Yishen in the front hall. "Thief, where are you running to?" A deep voice filled with profound energy came over like a tiger's roar. The powerful profound energy caused the air to tremble slightly. Feng Jiu turned her head to look and saw her father raising his chi and flying over. His tiger fist carried a powerful hidden force as it struck out. The force of his fist brought along a wind blade that streaked through the air, making a whooshing sound. She naturally couldn't fight with him. Not to mention whether or not she could beat him, it wouldn't be good if she accidentally hurt him. At that moment, she turned her body and quickly dodged his heavy fist attack. She didn't want to fight him head-on. Instead, she chose to quickly retreat and leaped out of the residence. "Catch that thief!" Feng Xiao shouted. When he saw Murong Yishen standing in front of the man in black, he hurriedly turned around and walked into the room. When he didn't see his father's figure in the room, his heart sank. Where's the old master? The housekeeper hurriedly followed, but when he saw that there was no one in the room, he couldn't help but be startled. He hurriedly said, "Just now when this old servant entered the courtyard, I only saw the man in black come out of the old master's room, but I didn't see the old master. Cert. Find them for me right now." He shouted loudly and looked at the two people fighting on the roof. "You must catch that thief." It wasn't good for her to fight with her father, but she wouldn't be polite with Murong Yishen. Moreover, she had long wanted to compete with Murong Yishen, who was known as the #1 genius of Glorious Sun Country. Thus, every move she made was ruthless and filled with killing intent. Shio! Bang bang! Seeing that the man in black's skills were not inferior to Murong Yishen's, Feng Xiao was secretly shocked. Chapter 137. His heart was filled with doubt. While he was deep in thought, he was interrupted by a voice. "Father, what happened?" Feng Qingji quickly arrived at his side. Seeing the two figures fighting on the roof, she couldn't help but widen her eyes. "An assassin actually came into our home? What did he come here for? Where's grandfather? Is grandfather all right? Your grandfather is gone." Feng Xiao's brows slightly furrowed. Her eyes were filled with worry that could not be hidden. Father's body was like that, yet now he was gone. Who took him away? What was that person's goal? What? Grandfather is gone. She was shocked and her heart was filled with doubt. How could the old man be gone? Could it be that he was taken away by someone? But what could they do by taking him away? Also, to be able to take someone away from the Feng Manor as if there was no one there, wasn't that person's skill too strange? Shio! Bang, bang! As their fists and legs collided, the sound of air currents and heavy sounds could be heard. The two figures, one black and one white, were both suffused with profound energy aura. Both of their attacks were merciless and every move was ruthless, causing the people below to involuntarily tremble in fear. While he was inwardly shocked by the black-clothed man's skills, he saw the black-clothed man turn his body and kick sideways. The leg that swept past even had a visible swift and fierce airflow condensed as it kicked towards Murong Yishen at a speed that was too fast for the ears to cover. UN. Murong Yishen groaned. His body lost balance and fell from the roof to the ground. He quickly adjusted himself and balanced his body as he landed. However, because of the speed and force of the fall, he still could not help but take a few steps back before he could stand firm. After he steadied himself, he looked up again and saw the black figure on the roof sweep over him. That gaze actually made him feel a bit familiar. For a moment, he was stunned and absent-minded. Quickly chase after him. Feng Xiao saw the black-clothed figure quickly leave. That black-clothed figure quickly disappeared into the night. She immediately ordered the guards to chase after him. With the speed of the Feng Manor's guards, how could they catch up to Fengjiu? Ever since she left the Feng Manor, she did not stop and quickly left the people behind her far behind. Only when she returned to the vicinity of the courtyard did she bring out the old man from her space. Supporting him, she leapt into the manor and into the inner courtyard. "Xiaoju, what do you think?" Guan Shalin and Leng Shuang were waiting for her in the courtyard. As soon as they saw her return, they hurried to welcome her. "He's all right," she handed him over to him and said, "Help him into the room first. Leng Shuang, you keep watch in the courtyard." "Yes." Leng Shuang answered and stood guard in the courtyard. After entering the room, Guan Shalin placed the old master Feng on the bed. Looking at the unconscious and emaciated old master Feng, he could not help but turn to Fengjiu. "Xiaoju, what happened to your grandfather? Why are you so haggard?" Fengjiu walked out from behind the screen. She had already changed into her casual clothes. After washing her hands, she walked over and said, "Brother, get me a basin of water first." As she spoke, she sat down on the side of the bed and once again examined her grandfather's body. She then took out her silver needles and placed them to the side. Guan Shalin fetched the water and placed it to the side. He then stood guard by the bed and did not disturb her. He watched as she took out her silver needles and pierced all 10 of her grandfather's fingers. She then placed them in the water and squeezed out the blood. Seeing that the water in the basin had been dyed black by the blood, he could not help but suck in a cold breath. That evil woman actually dared to use poison on your grandfather. Chapter 138. Change the basin of water again. All right. Guanshelin once again brought over a basin of clear water. After changing the basin of blood, this time, the blood that flowed out gradually returned to its original bright red color. He asked, "Has the poison been cured?" "There's still some poison left." Seeing that it was about time, she gestured for him to move the basin away. She wiped the blood off her hands, covered him with a blanket, and walked over to the table. "Big brother, when the sun rises, go and get the medicine according to this list. Get the medicine from different places." She wrote down a prescription and handed it to him. Guanshelin took it and glanced at it, then nodded. "All right, I'll go get the medicine when the sun rises." At the same time, the Feng family was in chaos. Feng Xiao led people to search for the old master, and Murong Yixian also joined in to help. That night, it could be said that everyone was in a state of panic. Because of their large movements, quite a few people knew that the old master of the Feng manor had been kidnapped. It was just that everyone found it strange. Saying that Feng Qingji had been kidnapped was still acceptable. After all, she was the Feng manor's beloved daughter, and she was an absolute beauty. But instead of kidnapping an absolute beauty, they kidnapped an old man. Also, they had recently been diagnosed with a demonic illness. Don't you think it was strange? Thus, there were many discussions. They wondered if it was an enemy of the Feng family, or if it was an enemy of the old master Feng who did it. As for the Feng manor, in Feng Qingji's courtyard, a middle-aged man once again came to her room. "Master, the identity of that brother and sister has been investigated." "Speak." "That man is called Guanshelin. He is a member of the second branch of the Guan family in Yunyu City. However, a few days ago, he had a falling out with the Guan family and asked to leave the family to set up his own residence. He is currently living in a residence in the southern part of the city. As for the woman, we couldn't find out where she came from. We only know that she is Guanshelin's sworn sister. No one has seen her face because she has always used a veil to cover it." Hearing this, a murderous look flashed through Su Ruoyun's eyes. A foxy woman of unknown origin could make Murong Yixian lose his soul. She was really capable. Get a few people from the poison sect to kill that Guan guy. As for that woman, capture her and bring her back to me. I want to see what kind of face she has under that veil. Her voice was filled with viciousness, and it was especially horrifying in this quiet night. "Yes." The middle-aged man replied respectfully. "Also, find out which force kidnapped the old man. If you find them, deal with them directly outside. If he was sensible, she wouldn't have killed him. However, he was already so old, yet he still had a pair of disgusting shrewdness in his eyes. Since they were interfering with her business, then they shouldn't blame her for not considering their relationship." "Yes." The middle-aged man replied again. When he saw her wave her hand, indicating for him to leave, he turned around and left. The next morning, when old Master Feng slowly woke up, he saw a person lying on the side of the bed. He turned his head slightly and saw that disfigured face. When he thought of the woman's words, his heart clenched in pain and he couldn't help but tear up the pillow. Seeing her disfigured face already made him feel heartache and guilt, but when he heard that woman say that she had used a knife to slice Feng girl's face open, that heartache made him unable to suppress it and turned into anger and grief. Chapter 139. His skinny hand trembled as he reached out, wanting to gently touch the scars on her face. Unexpectedly, before he could touch her, she woke up. Feng Jiu suddenly woke up and sat up vigilantly. When he saw that it was the old man who had woken up and was reaching out his trembling hand, he relaxed. Seeing that the old man was crying silently, he couldn't help but be startled. "Grandfather, why are you crying?" She raised her hand to wipe away his tears and asked, "Are you still feeling unwell? Come, let me help you sit up." Her vigilance made the old man's heart clench. How much suffering did she have to go through to have such a vigilant reaction? Was she afraid of danger and didn't dare to sleep? Phone lass. Grandfather has let you down. Tears flowed down his old face, filled with regret and pain. If he had known that such a thing would happen after a few months of closed-door cultivation, he would never have gone into closed-door cultivation. Hearing this, she revealed a smile and helped him sit up on the bed. She softly said, "Grandfather, don't be like this. I'm fine now, really fine." In order to divert his attention and not let him continue to blame himself, she asked, "Grandfather, what happened after you went back? You inhaled a stimulant drug and your body was poisoned." Stimulant. The old man wiped away his tears and thought for a moment. His voice was filled with resentment as he said, "It was that woman. At that time, I went to the courtyard to catch her, but she sprinkled some powder on me when I wasn't paying attention. I accidentally inhaled it and she said. At this point, his voice paused and he hesitated for a moment. She said that my face was cut by her. Grandfather was angered by her torture. That was probably the only thing she could think of. Otherwise, the old man wouldn't have fallen into her trap so easily. Old Master Feng nodded, "That's right. I was very angry when I heard it. I only felt a fire rush to my head and I lost control of my rationality." As he spoke, he seemed to have thought of something and asked in surprise, "That's right, how did I get here? Wasn't I locked up?" Although he lost control of his rationality at that time, his consciousness was still somewhat clear. However, he didn't know how he got here. Hearing this, she smiled and her bright eyes flashed with a sly look. "Of course it was me who brought grandfather out." But seeing that he still wanted to ask, she interrupted him and said with a smile, "All right, grandfather, since we're already out, you don't have to think too much. You still have some poison left in your body, so you should recuperate first. I'll go get a bowl of porridge for grandfather to eat." Old Master Feng was slightly startled when he saw her turn around and walk out. Bring him out of the Feng Manor? That was impossible, right? No one was clearer than him on what sort of precautions the Feng Manor had taken. The Lung Shuang in the courtyard saw her coming out and went to greet her. "Master. Lung Shuang, go to the kitchen and see if Qingyang has finished cooking the porridge. Bring some over." "Yes." She answered and went to the kitchen. After Lung Shuang left, Guan Shilin walked in and said, "Xiaoju, I've bought the medicine and told Qing Niang to boil it." "That's right, when I went out to buy the medicine this morning, I saw the Feng Manor's people looking all over for someone. Do you think they'll find us here?" "Don't worry. Even if they find us here, it'll be fine. Just pay more attention to their movements during this period of time." You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.